On March 8th of this year, Timothée Chalamet arrived in China, and he soon showed up on the streets of a Chinese megacity, where he was seen going out of his way to blend in with the locals. He was eating hot pot, he was playing ping pong with random Chinese grandmas and grandpas, and he even sold fermented tofu at a local food market. And what's really impressive is that he spoke quite a bit of Chinese in some of these clips, which shows that he and his team had seriously prepared for this trip. Like, it definitely wasn't a trip decided on a whim. Now, the purpose of this carefully planned trip was to promote his movie Marty Supreme, a movie he had hoped would give him an Oscar. It did not, unfortunately.
The Oscar goes to Michael B. Jordan.
That being said, the movie did very well in terms of box office numbers, especially in the US domestically, grossing almost $100 million, which is quite impressive considering that ping pong, the subject of the movie, is a more or less niche sport in the US that not a lot of people care about. Now, in comparison, ping pong is a much more popular sport in China, which was probably why Timothée did this China tour in the first place, ping pong being the national sport of the country. So logically, you would expect the movie to also do well in China. Unfortunately, it did not. The movie was a gigantic flop in China. The box office performance was abysmal, pulling in only about $500K USD in ticket sales. Meanwhile, the public image of Timothée Chalamet in China seems to have also declined quite a bit compared to how he was perceived just a few years ago. So much so that some news outlets have even blamed his declining popularity as one of the factors behind the movie's failure. Now, just a few years ago, Timothée was almost universally loved and enamored in China as this artsy, elegant actor with this soft, caring, and emotionally introspective aura, which is a type of persona that is incredibly popular in China, the soft emo boy type. And on top of that, just look at that jawline. He had the kind of face that checked every box of China's Eurocentric beauty standards. I mean, Chinese netizens loved him so much that they even give him the nickname Sweet Tea. Just going off the tangent here, Chinese netizens have a habit of giving Western celebrities nicknames based on either phonetic/sound resemblance or how well it fits their image. For example, the nickname for Katy Perry is Fruit Sister because she always wears fruit-themed colorful outfits in her iconic songs. The nickname for Kristen Stewart is Facial Paralysis Lady because of her wooden facial expressions in her roles. And the nickname for Ryan Gosling is Commander Gao, based completely on sound similarity between the English and Chinese pronunciations. And in the case of Timothée, it was a combination of sound resemblance and image matching, with many netizens finding his aura sweet and caring. So in a nutshell, there was no reason to not like this guy who was seen as this charming heartthrob. However, fast forward to March of this year, the public perception of Timothée has shifted 180 degrees, with some even going as far as to call him a cocky alpha male. So what happened? Was it because of that notorious ballet and opera comment? Was it because of his dating choice? Or was it a series of smaller events and speeches that slowly built up until they became the final straw, shattering his public image? So in this video, I would like to take a look at why Chinese netizens have changed their opinions on Timothée. And what I find really fascinating is that despite the language barrier and the cultural barrier, Chinese netizens have somehow done a very analytical and almost scientific analysis on his entire career and personality, and it would be a waste not to share that with you guys. Part 1. Timothée's early career was essentially taking the shortcut. So Timothée started his career somewhere between a nepo baby and a self-made actor. Although most of his family members were in show business, he definitely wasn't as privileged as some other nepo babies who were handed important roles in prestigious projects right from the start. While he was able to land roles in well-known projects like Homeland and Interstellar, those roles were fairly minor. I mean, it wasn't until I worked on this video that I realized he was even in Interstellar. And that wasn't because his acting was bad or forgettable. It was simply because he had too little screen time to make a meaningful impression. And most people probably felt the same way I did, because Timothée himself admitted in a 2024 interview that he was disappointed at the time that that Interstellar hadn't boosted his career as much as he had expected. But don't you worry, Timmy, because in just about 3 years, you'll find yourself becoming a global sensation with the film Call Me By Your Name. This film, at first glance, looked pretty inconspicuous compared to all the other massive projects in Hollywood at the time. But looking back with hindsight, one could argue that it boosted Timothy's career more than any blockbuster movie ever could. Not only was he able to launch his signature soft emo boy persona through this film, but there was also a bunch of other hidden perks that, according to Chinese netizens, he was able to benefit from. The first and most important perk was the gay aspect of things. So, in case you don't know, this movie featured a tragic gay love story. Timothy and his co-star Armie Hammer are both straight. Now, whether straight actors should be allowed to play gay roles has been endlessly debated online, and the crux of the argument seems to be that people are not necessarily unhappy about straight actors playing gay roles per se. What people are upset about is when straight actors profit from these roles in ways that feel exploitative, such as receiving enormous fame, winning awards and praise for their quote-unquote sacrifice on screen, and landing lucrative brand deals, all without having to deal with the real-life struggles that the LGBT community has to face. In China in particular, there has been a whole industry of what I like to call gay profiting, where two straight actors pretend to be gay, not only within the screenplay, but also sometimes off-screen, giving fans false hints and signals that they're dating in real life, when in reality, they aren't. They're straight. And they do this because it sells. There's a huge female demographic rooting for gay romances, and if that fandom managed to extend beyond the show and into the actors' real lives, the financial rewards can be enormous. These shipper fans are often willing to spend a ton of money supporting the celebrity pair, whether that's buying magazines, buying products they endorse, attending fan events, etc. And what's even more remarkable is that when this shipper fandom becomes large enough, they'll also support each actor's individual career, because fans believe that the more successful each actor becomes, the stronger their relationship will grow. In other words, by acting gay off-screen, these actors almost got a cheat code to career success. Therefore, this strategy worked best for actors with little or subpar talent who weren't able to make a name for themselves through their acting alone. Especially over the past few years in the Chinese entertainment industry, there have been many instances of actors going from complete nobodies to overnight fame through this type of performative gay strategy. So over time, Chinese netizens began to develop a general sense of contempt and disdain towards actors who became famous this way. They see it as essentially taking a shortcut to success, which is unfair to all the other talented actors out there. Now, in the case of Timothy and his co-star Armie Hammer, they did not engage in that type of practice, or at least based on all the interviews and off-screen interactions I've seen, they were very friendly with each other and seemed pretty close, but they did not act like they were in love off-screen. But I guess that was enough to make some fans jump on the shipping train and start posting fan edits online and become very vocal about it. So even though Timothy was not intentionally gay profiting, the mere fact that he rose to global fame through a gay film was enough to make some Chinese netizens think that he had taken a shortcut. And then let's talk about another important perk that this movie brought him: the director's camera work. So the director of this film, Luca Guadagnino, is well known for the exceptional aesthetics of his camera work. I mean, that was the biggest impression I got from this movie, which is that this is a really pretty film. Something about the color design was just surreal, and it blended really well with the dreamy, soft, nostalgic theme of the movie. And another key characteristic of his films is that this director really knows how to convey intimacy and the subtleties of slow romance through things like the hesitant touches, the lingering close-ups, etc. So all of this led to a question: how much did Timothy benefit from the director's camera work? And this is a question that Chinese netizens tend to ask a lot. Whenever a show becomes popular, netizens like to ask, whose credit was it? Was it the acting, or was it the directing, or the script? And with their analytical minds, netizens can get surprisingly good at pinpointing who made the show. There are instances when the directing was actually pretty bad, but the actors were so good that they carried the show. By contrast, netizens argue that Timothy is the type of actor who relies on sensory-style directors, like Luca Guadagnino. If you put him under a different director, someone who's not as peculiar with their camera aesthetics, his acting wouldn't stand out nearly as much. And a favorite example example Chinese netizens like to cite is Dune Part 2. Many people felt that his performance in this film was surprisingly flat. Some would even go as far as to say that he was completely overshadowed by almost any of his co-stars. A commonly cited example is his scenes with Faith Ratha Harkness. In this scene, netizens argued that Timothée was completely outperformed by Austin Butler, who played Harkness, and that he failed to deliver the level of emotional intensity that the scene called for. And netizens argue that it wasn't just one or two specific scenes where his performance felt underwhelming. In the grand scheme of things, his acting essentially failed to portray the character growth of Paul Atreides, and that he lacked the range required to capture the complexities and the nuances of what makes Paul the important protagonist. And another interesting point mentioned by netizens is that Timothy's whole physiques, aka skinny and small-framed, may have worked well when Paul was only 15 years old in the first movie, but as the character grows old and does more combat scenes in Part 2 and the upcoming Part 3, the lack of muscles and the lack of physical growth on the actor's part is starting to make his character look even less convincing, especially the scenes where Paul takes on powerful opponents. And that realization led some people to make the reverse argument. If Timothée is disadvantaged by his physique in the later parts of Dune, then you could argue that he benefited from his physique in Call Me By Your Name. The character he plays, Elio, is supposed to be this skinny, fragile, melancholic teenager, which is exactly what Timothée looks like. So he was already in character just by standing there without even having to try, which again led netizens to argue that Timothy's rise to fame through Call Me By Your Name was owed at least partially to luck and to factors beyond himself. But that movie was a while ago, and obviously you cannot conclude on an actor's career based on just one movie. What about afterwards? What about all the other work that he released from 2017 up until now? And that leads us to Part 2. Timothy's career and personality in one word: calculating. To prove this point, Chinese netizens have pinpointed 3 events: his comment on ballet and opera, his dating choices, and his career trajectory. These seem like 3 completely separate things, but once you connect the dots, they reveal a pattern. First, let's talk about his career trajectory. Now, calculating is a word with quite negative connotations. Perhaps a better word to describe the early stage of his career is strategic. After the breakthrough of Call Me By Your Name, Timothée carefully crafted his on-screen soft boy persona through roles like the artsy, intellectual Kyle Shebo in Lady Bird, the vulnerable, sensitive Nick Sheff in Beautiful Boy, and the charming feminist Laurie in Little Women. And once he had solidified his image as Hollywood's new poster boy for high culture, he began taking on blockbuster projects like Dune and Wonka, which significantly expanded his mainstream appeal and turned him into a household name. Then, over the past year or two, he has noticeably shifted his focus towards prestige projects with Academy Awards potential, such as the Bob Dylan biopic and, most recently, Marty Supreme. Now, when Chinese netizens look back at this career journey, they argue that his role-choosing decisions were highly strategic and result-oriented. Almost every project seems to offer some tangible career benefit. Some roles help him cultivate a specific public image, some boost his commercial box office appeal, and others position him for Academy Awards candidates. Now, you might say, but what's wrong with pursuing success? Isn't that what every Hollywood actor does? Well, not necessarily everyone. Chinese netizens compared Timothée to actors with similar career background, like Robert Pattinson, who also rose to global fame overnight through one film. Yet, unlike Timothée, right after Twilight, Pattinson took on a variety of rather bizarre and unsafe roles across a wide array of genres. Many of the roles he chose had very questionable mainstream appeal and offered no guarantee of commercial success. Almost like he had no care for the market or his popularity, and he was purely choosing roles out of artistic curiosity. As a result, netizens see Pattinson as a true artist chasing the craft, while they see Timothée more or less as a fame maxer who treats himself like a marketing brand. And this aspect of his character makes even more sense when you connect it to his dating history. See a pattern here? Bro seems to really like dating rich nepo babies. Daughter of Madonna, daughter of Steve Jobs, daughter of Johnny Depp. Which is why when he started dating Kylie Jenner, it was genuinely surprising that so many people were surprised by it. Because Kylie is totally his type. Probably even an upgrade in terms of liquid wealth. So Chinese netizens jokingly commented that Timothée likes to climb the social ladder even in his personal life. And it certainly doesn't help when you factor in his comment on ballet and opera.
And I don't want to be working in ballet or opera. You know, things where it's like, hey, keep this thing alive, even though no one cares about this anymore.
Now, what people find upsetting is not necessarily that he disliked ballet and opera. If he had simply said that he did not enjoy these art forms from a personal taste perspective, I don't think people would have piled on him that much. Because everyone's taste is different, right? You may like oranges and I may like apples. Quite the contrary. From his other clips where he talked more in depth about ballet and opera, he actually showed a great deal of knowledge on the subject, which gives the feeling that he might have even liked ballet and opera inherently. But he does not want to work in those fields because they're no longer popular, because they no longer sell tickets. And to netizens, that is much worse than simply not liking ballet and opera, because it shows that he sees art purely from a monetary and materialistic viewpoint. Art is only worth pursuing if it is profitable, which again makes him look a lot less like an artist and more like a marketing agency. And his 14 cents of viewership comment really did not help either.
I just lost 14 cents in viewership.
So now he's even reducing the audience to the amount of money they make him. And this raised an even bigger problem. If this is the type of person who does everything with an agenda, then when he did that China trip, when he sold tofu and spoke Chinese and did this and that, acting that he was interested in Chinese culture, how much of that was sincere? Was he genuine about it, or was that just part of his movie campaign? Did he also see his Chinese audiences as central viewership? Now, you may say, okay, so this guy pursues success. At the end of the day, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with having ambition? And that leads us to part 3, when sweet tea becomes bitter tea.
I'm really in pursuit of greatness. I want to be one of the greats. I'm inspired by the greats.
All of these talks about wanting to be the greatest actor may have landed well within the Western audience whose culture generally encourages expressions of confidence and ambition. But in China, where humility and modesty are traditionally valued, these remarks can simply be interpreted as arrogance. And what especially rubbed Chinese netizens the wrong way was his speech about how much effort he had put into acting and how he wants everyone to appreciate that.
Discipline and the work ethic I'm bringing to these things, I don't want people to take for granted. I don't want to take for granted.
In recent years, Chinese netizens have become increasingly cynical whenever celebrities talk about how hard their lives are. From their perspective, actors are some of the most privileged professions on the planet. So people have absolutely zero empathy towards any of the struggles celebrities may face. An A-list actor talking about his career sacrifice will instantly make him look out of touch and is guaranteed to make people roll their eyes. And then came the final nail in the coffin, which concluded that this guy has lost the plot. His comment on procreation. So last year during a Vogue interview, Timothée discussed his desire to have children one day, and while he acknowledged that some people can't have children or are never in a position to, he believes that, quote, procreation is the reason we're here. He talked about having this friend who has no kids, and he thinks that living life without having kids is, quote unquote, bleak. Now, if there's one thing guaranteed to start an outrage on the Chinese internet these days, it's telling young people they should get married and have kids. The birth rate is at all-time low, and really nobody is interested in talks about procreation. That's a topic too complex on its own, and I'm not going to get into that in this video. So the takeaway is that comment of his really did not resonate with Chinese netizens, and even worse, it almost made him sound like an alpha male, which is a persona that is incredibly unpopular and frowned upon on the Chinese internet these days. And all these comments and speeches taken together, they really chipped away at the soft boy image that Timothée had previously built. Bro turned out to be just like any other arrogant celebrity with an untamed ego, and that is when netizens realize sweet tea has never been sweet. And that concludes this video. Thanks for watching.